Europe, 1917. A continent drowning in sorrow, caught in an unending nightmare. For long years a war have stripped humanity bare. Millions already lie beneath this muddy graveyard, with millions more destined to join them. Trenches, once temporary shelters, are now permanent homes, homes of disease, despair, and death. Every day is the same. Artillery roaring, friends falling, hope fading. Young men, barely old enough to shave, trapped in a senseless slaughter they no longer understand. The world holds its breath, praying for an end, desperate for salvation. But the battlefields only consume more lives, endlessly hungry. Salvation would come, but not from Europe. Far away, a great nation hesitates, watching and waiting. America stands at crossroads, its decision poised to alter history forever. But what if that decision was never made? Across the ocean, hope flickers back to life. Just when Europe had nearly resigned itself to defeat, a beacon ignites on the horizon. America steps forward, casting aside neutrality and choosing to shoulder the burdens of a fractured world. Thousands upon thousands of American sons cross the Atlantic, bringing not only fresh soldiers but desperately needed hope and determination. They are young men, farmers, factory workers, shopkeepers, and scholars, all unified in purpose to end the brutal stalemate that has gripped Europe for years. For the battered allies, America's arrival is more than just reinforcement. It symbolizes life, relief, and the first glimmer of victory after years of darkness. Suddenly, what seemed impossible feels achievable again. The tide of war, once hopelessly against them, begins to turn. But imagine for a moment if this never occurred. Imagine if America's troops had never crossed that ocean. How different would history become? But imagine none of this ever occurred. Imagine if America had never joined the fight. If President Wilson's resolve had held and neutrality remained unbroken. Imagine if millions of American soldiers never boarded those ships, never crossed the Atlantic, never stormed the fields of Europe. Would Europe have been doomed without American intervention? Would France and Britain have held strong or crumble beneath German might? Could Germany's victory reshape borders, rewrite politics, and set the stage for a vastly different century? This is a story of a world that almost was a history unwritten, yet hauntingly possible. A story that begins with a single, crucial choice. Now, imagine a Europe reshaped by a victorious Germany, an empire stretching from Berlin to the shores of the Atlantic, redefining everything we know today. Imagine Britain battered, isolated, and uncertain of its place in the world. And picture America, prosperous yet withdrawn, untouched, but at what cost of the world it left behind? Together, we'll journey down this alternate path, exploring the terrifying and fascinating outcomes hidden in one fateful decision. History, after all, is never just one story. It's a web of endless possibilities, waiting to be unraveled. Welcome to a journey where history itself is rewritten. Welcome to
What If Chronicles 2.0?
What if America never joined World War I? In the early days of the Great War, America stood firmly apart from the horrors sweeping through Europe. President Woodrow Wilson had vowed that the nation would remain neutral, protecting American citizens from foreign entanglements. America must remain impartial, neutral in fact, as well as in name. Millions of Americans, scarred by memories of previous conflicts and wary of Europe's endless feuds, loudly voiced their support for Wilson's neutrality stance. The nation appeared united in its isolation, determined to stay safe behind protective oceans. But neutrality, as America was soon to learn, was a fragile promise. The tides of war had their own plans. Despite America's commitment to neutrality, fate and Germany had other plans. Germany's ruthless strategy of unrestricted submarine warfare meant that any ship, even civilian, became fair game. And soon disaster struck. The sinking of the Lusitania in May 1915 became a shocking tragedy, one that enraged the American public. Over 1,000 innocent lives were lost, including 128 Americans. The brutality of Germany's actions shook America's neutrality to its core. And if the Lusitania tragedy wasn't enough, Germany soon made another catastrophic misstep. In January 1917, British intelligence intercepted a telegram, one that revealed Germany's bold, secret plot to drag America into war by urging Mexico to attack U.S. territory. These two fatal mistakes shattered America's patience. Neutrality became impossible as anger and fear surged through the nation. Germany had unintentionally set America on a collision course with war. Faced with mounting German aggression, President Wilson knew the fragile peace America had clung to was now impossible to maintain. Each report, each plea for justice, deepened his conviction that neutrality was no longer sustainable. America's hand had been forced. On April 6, 1917, after intense debate and reflection, Congress made its decision. America declared war on Germany, officially abandoning neutrality and pledging to bring the conflict to a swift and decisive end. Across America, anxiety gave way to relief and pride. Citizens believed they were joining a righteous cause, a fight to restore peace and justice. Young men enlisted eagerly, convinced their courage could finally turn the tide. Yet, even as America took this historic step forward, one can't help but wonder, what if the decision had been different? What if Wilson resisted the pressure? How dramatically might history have shifted? But imagine, for just one moment, Germany chose differently. What if Germany had paused, hesitating just long enough to see the potential consequences clearly? What if caution prevailed over aggression? Picture a scenario with a Zimmerman telegram. The final spark igniting America's fury never reaches foreign shores. Diplomatic caution prevents the telegram from ever being sent. Germany carefully avoids enraging the United States, maintaining America's fragile neutrality. In this alternate history, America remains at peace, watching quietly from afar, still hesitant to plunge into Europe's destructive chaos. Germany's strategic caution reshapes the trajectory of the war completely. The Allies stand alone, increasingly desperate. With America safely isolated, how long could France and Britain resist the might of a careful, calculated Germany? What new destiny awaits Europe, and indeed the world, in this alternate timeline? With America still on the sidelines, Europe's remaining allies find themselves trapped in an ever-darkening nightmare. The trenches, once stronghold of resistance, have become prisons of mud and misery. Every passing day brings more casualties, less food, fewer bullets, and an ever-shrinking will to fight. In Britain's trenches, ammunition dwindles dangerously low. Supplies from America never arrived, leaving soldiers stranded, forced to choose carefully, every bullet precious, every life fragile. Courage remains, but hope fades, replaced by bitter resignation. To the east, Russia, once a stalwart ally, collapses entirely. Revolution rages unchecked. Soldiers desert by the thousands, refusing to fight a war that no longer holds meaning. Chaos reigns as a nation descends into civil war, abandoning its comrades in arms to face the Central Powers alone. Without American support, without hope for relief or rescue, how long can Britain and France truly hold out against an enemy that grows stronger by the day? A storm is gathering on the horizon, and Europe's fate hangs by a thread. In the spring of 1918, sensing vulnerability, Germany unleashes its most ambitious assault yet, the Spring Offensive. This time, the Allies have no reinforcements. No Americans arriving to shore up their defenses. No fresh supplies coming across the Atlantic. Germany pushes relentlessly, breaking through lines that had stood stubbornly for years. One by one, French defenses collapse under relentless pressure. Villages and towns fall overnight, their citizens fleeing, hoping Paris will hold. But their hopes fade quickly. Paris, the jewel of France, the heart of Allied resistance, becomes the next inevitable target. Paris falls, and with it crumbles the morale of an entire nation. Streets once alive with vibrant culture now echo with the grim sound of marching German boots. The Eiffel Tower, symbol of freedom, culture, and pride, now flies the flag of the Kaiser. Europe's cultural heart, broken and subdued. With Paris conquered, the balance of power shifts dramatically. Can Britain survive alone? Will Europe's future now belong solely to Germany's empire? One thing is clear. Without America's help, history has changed irrevocably. With France fallen and Paris occupied, Britain stands utterly alone, staring down the barrel of annihilation. Morale is shattered. supplies exhausted, and hope rapidly evaporating. The very nation that once ruled the seas is now fighting simply to survive. Every option seems unbearable. Continue fighting and face almost certain defeat, or surrender and accept the unbearable humiliation of occupation. For Britain's leaders, these choices carry unimaginable weight. They're deciding not just their own fate, but the fate of generations yet unborn. Across Britain, everyday citizens suffer quietly. Rations run dangerously low. Fear grips the nation, and radio broadcasts desperately plead for outside assistance. But America, once a hopeful ally, remains silent across the Atlantic, steadfastly neutral. Britain's calls echo unanswered, amplifying their isolation. We must fight. Even alone, we cannot surrender Britain to darkness. History will judge us by our courage, not by our caution. But can courage alone save a nation on the brink of ruin? Britain's darkest hour is upon them. A future of submission or sacrifice lies ahead. With no hope of victory, Britain and France find themselves dragged to the negotiating table. The room feels suffocating, charged with the painful awareness that their nation's futures hang in the balance. The victors dictate the terms, harsh and uncompromising. France, already crushed beneath occupation, must surrender territories, pay crippling reparations, and accept German occupation indefinitely. Britain, though not occupied, must disarm, relinquish control of vital sea routes, and abandon their colonies, terms designed to permanently break their empire. With signatures etched painfully onto paper, the old Europe ceases to exist. A new order is born beneath German dominance, a world reshaped not by mutual agreement, but through raw, uncompromising power. The Allies' humiliation is complete. But while peace treaties are signed in ink, the flames of resentment burn deep. Could such a forced peace ever truly last? Or has Germany merely planted the seeds for another conflict, even darker and more devastating, still waiting to erupt? Europe awakes to a harsh new reality. With Paris conquered and the Allies humiliated, Germany now rules the continent unopposed. In a chilling reversal of fate, Paris, once a symbol of freedom and culture, is reduced to a trophy of war. Its citizens forced to watch helplessly as the victorious Germans parade triumphantly through their beloved city. For the French, defeat isn't merely political, it's personal. Streets once filled with laughter and joy now echo with silence and suppressed rage. The Kaiser's banners fly proudly over Paris, reminding the world who now dictates Europe's destiny. In Germany, victory is intoxicating. Kaiser Wilhelm stands triumphant, dreaming of a German century, an empire that stretches endlessly. But beneath the celebrations, darker questions linger. How long can an empire built by force remain stable? Can victory built on humiliation truly last forever? But beneath this forced calm lies a future riddled with uncertainty. Europe's map has been redrawn, but how long can this new order hold? How will the defeated nations respond to German rule, and at what cost? Defeated but defiant, Britain withdraws behind its shores, isolated and vulnerable. Having watched helplessly as their French allies crumbled, Britain's only defense is now its navy, its legendary fleet force into desperate defensive positions, guarding an island increasingly alone against German domination. In the streets of London, hope gives way to endurance. Food shortages grip the nation. Ordinary citizens, already battered by years of war, now face relentless uncertainty. Children, forced to grow up in this bleak new world, ask questions their parents cannot answer. Families, once proud citizens of a global empire, now grapple simply to survive from day to day. Britain, once ruler of the seas, now fights simply to preserve itself. Its powerful navy, diminished but still proud, forms a defensive wall, prepared to resist any invasion, holding out desperately against a threat looming just across the water. Britain may have retreated into isolation, but the fight isn't over. Will it manage to rebuild and rise again, or will it become the next target of Germany's unstoppable ambition? The answers lie hidden beneath layers of uncertainty, waiting ominously in the foggy waters ahead. Far to the east, another tragedy unfolds. Russia, already weakened by the disastrous war effort, descends deeper into revolution and civil war. The fragile hope of peace and democracy vanishes, replaced by ruthless combat that engulfs cities, villages, and entire regions. What began as a promise for a better future rapidly spirals out of control. Families become enemies overnight, neighbors turn against neighbors, and Russia's cities collapse under the brutal weight of ideological warfare. Without the Allies' support and now abandoned by an indifferent Europe consumed by its own troubles, Russia's turmoil deepens into an endless nightmare. No side yields. Neither Bolsheviks nor monarchists are willing or able to compromise. Their nation crumbles beneath endless violence, millions lost to starvation, disease, and brutality. Russia's civil war, tragically unleashed, appears destined to rage indefinitely. As Russia tears itself apart, Europe looks on, indifferent and preoccupied with its own suffering under German rule. Will Russia ever recover? Or is this once great empire doomed to remain a land of perpetual strife, a dark testament to revolution gone horribly wrong? With victory secured, Germany wastes no time in reshaping Europe's political landscape. Borders that had stood for generations vanish overnight, replaced by the ruthless dictates of victorious power. Germany's vision of a unified Europe, dominated entirely from Berlin, becomes reality. But beneath Germany's triumphant facade, trouble brews. Europeans forced under German rule find themselves prisoners in their own homes, simmering quietly in resentment, humiliation, and defiance. These imposed borders do not just reshape maps, they shape generations of anger and resistance. And the chaos isn't confined to Europe alone. Colonies, sensing Europe's vulnerability, seize their chance of freedom. From India to Africa, suppressed nations rise in rebellion, dismantling centuries of colonial dominance. Germany's European victory inadvertently sparks global upheaval. Germany's victory might have unified Europe, but at the cost of global stability. The stage is now set for decades of conflict, resistance, and chaos. Europe united yet divided, victorious yet vulnerable. In this alternate reality, the ambitious young Adolf Hitler never finds a stage. A victorious Germany leaves no room for the bitter rhetoric of a failed artist and war veteran. Without the humiliation of defeat, his hateful messages fall on deaf ears. Forgotten and ignored, his words fade into obscurity. Instead of rising to power, Hitler remains a footnote, just another disillusioned man bitterly shouting at indifferent passers-by. History denies him the moment he craves, as Germany's victory erases the pain and resentment he relied upon. The world, unaware of his dangerous potential, moves forward along a very different path. Yet even as Hitler fades into obscurity, a troubling question lingers. Without him, what kind of future awaits Germany? Could another, possibly even darker force emerge to fill the void he left behind? Beneath the calm surface of German-dominated Europe, bitterness festers, tensions building quietly but inevitably. Britain, isolated and humiliated, never truly accepts defeat. Instead, it bides its time, preparing meticulously, quietly rebuilding an army in the shadows, fueled by an unquenchable thirst for vengeance. Aware of the growing threat across the English Channel, Germany fortifies its borders relentlessly. Fear of renewed conflict shapes every decision. Walls rise higher, fortresses grow stronger, and paranoia infects the empire's leadership. Both nations know another war is coming. Neither wishes it, but both see it as inevitable. Secretly, behind closed doors and beneath shadows, the seeds of a second, deadlier conflict are sown. Britain, still proud yet wounded, quietly prepares its vengeance. Germany, vigilant and wary, fortifies its empire, aware that the peace it forced upon Europe now hangs by a fragile thread. Across the Atlantic, blissfully unaware of Europe's turmoil, America flourishes in peaceful isolation. Unburdened by war and shielded by its oceans, the nation focuses inward, prospering economically, culturally, and technologically. Life seems better than ever, untouched by the dark clouds gathering overseas. Yet this comfortable isolation has a cost. Shielded from global realities, Americans grow detached from political storms brewing across the ocean. While Europe moves toward an inevitable collision, America remains inward-focused, wealthy, carefree, but oblivious, its strength idle, its influence fading. Could America remain detached forever? Or would history eventually demand the nation pay attention? Perhaps too late, too unprepared to respond effectively? Isolation might offer prosperity, but at what hidden cost to the world and to America's future itself? If America had never joined World War I, today's world would be profoundly different. A century later, Germany stands as the uncontested superpower Europe, a continent molded by generations of its cultural, political, and military dominance. From Paris to Moscow, from Brussels to Warsaw, German influence shapes every aspect of life, from language and culture to politics and industry. Across the ocean, America, prosperous but isolated, remains withdrawn from global tensions. Never having asserted its global leadership, it stands rich, peaceful, yet unaware of the enormous geopolitical pressures boiling beneath the surface of this seemingly stable new world. Yet beneath this facade of German supremacy lies volatility and unrest, countless suppressed nations yearning to reclaim independence, tensions unresolved, resentments festering beneath a thin veneer of stability. History has shown that empires built by force rarely last, and this German-dominated world, however powerful, may stand on dangerously shifting sands. This alternate reality invites a haunting question. Would such a world be more peaceful or far more perilous? As history reveals time and again, decisions shape destinies in ways no one can fully foresee. What if indeed, history turns on the smallest moments, the smallest decisions? A single action or a single hesitation can ripple outward, forever altering the course of human events. America's choice to enter World War I shaped the very world we live in today. But what if the choice had been different? Imagine the countless lives changed, soldiers who never fought, families who never suffered, cities never destroyed. Yet also imagine freedoms lost, liberty surrendered, nations dominated by an uncompromising empire. Every action echoes through history, influencing millions of lives in ways we may never fully understand. History, after all, isn't merely facts or dates. It's people, dreams, hopes, and fears. One decision, made or unmade, can rewrite countless destinies. And now, the ultimate question remains unanswered. Would the world be better or worse without America's entry into World War I? Every decision we make or fail to make doesn't just change history, it changes countless lives. Imagine the soldier who never fought, the poet whose words went unwritten, the families never torn apart by war, and those never reunited in its aftermath. Imagine millions of lives, altered or erased entirely, their stories replaced by blank pages, destinies never fulfilled. In this alternate history, countless stories remain unwritten, dreams unfulfilled, triumphs never celebrated, tragedies never mourned. History isn't merely about nations or empires. It's about people, their joys and sorrows, victories and defeats, hopes and heartbreaks. History is fragile, vulnerable, yet endlessly powerful. One moment, one choice can erase or create countless lives. What stories might have emerged if the world had chosen differently? Perhaps the true power of history lies not just in the paths we've taken, but in those we've never traveled. History isn't just about the past. It's about us here, today, deciding what we believe. You've seen the possibilities. A victorious Germany, an isolated America, Europe in turmoil, or perhaps even a world without World War II entirely. But now it's your turn. How do you feel about this alternate history? Would the world be a safer, better place? Or would it be darker, less free, and more uncertain? History's greatest lessons come not only from asking questions, but from daring to explore the answers together. Your voice matters. Tell us your thoughts, theories, or predictions in the comments below. Debate with others, challenge ideas, or simply share your feelings. Every opinion helps us better understand ourselves and the fascinating world of what if. Together, let's explore history's infinite possibilities. Join the conversation, subscribe, and be part of the incredible journey ahead, right here on What If Chronicles 2.0.